Now our political panel. Alvin Jordan of Rock Solutions is with us, along with Maura Gillespie, founder principal at Blue Stack Strategies. It's great to see both of you here. Really remarkable day in the court, and I don't want to try to turn either of you into legal analysts. We want to know what the political implications are of what we heard today. Because, Alvin, I'll start with you. It appears that the court may be on the precipice of taking a couple of arguments away from Joe Biden on the campaign trail. You can see that vindicated Truth Social post already. If there's any nuance, if there's any sunlight between the court and the government on this.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I look at it is any, kind of amount of time that is given back to the former president is a win. And so I think if you're the Biden administration, you have to look at this and feel, like you've, lost a little ground in the sense that, any delay or any pushing it back to the courts, really buys enough time for Trump to continue to at least think about what his next move might be. And so I think, in that way, you have to look at it as definitely a step back as far as, like you said, building those arguments if you're, part of the Biden camp for sure.
Well, so it remains a question as to whether or not Trump is ever going to see a trial in Jack Smith's case. He very well could not if ultimately it doesn't go before the election. He is elected president again and has the ability to pardon himself for a federal case like this. He is, though, Maura, in court in New York for a trial that is ongoing. A lot of people consider these to be lesser charges, if you will, or not have the same kind of gravity as the ones related to January 6th. But if he were to be convicted in New York a couple weeks from now, which is a real possibility, how is that going to change things for him politically? Does that still fuel the fire of the base, or does it call into question enough of those independents' willingness to vote for him that actually it is something much more serious?
It doesn't change his base. Their support for him is unwavering. We have seen that. He has time and again showed us, and they've proved it. For those who are, and when we say independents, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're in the middle. Like, they just don't know who to vote for. They're lost. They don't know who they really are going to choose, and they may very well do write-ins. I think that's something that people need to consider as well. We saw that in Pennsylvania. A ton of people still voted for Nikki Haley.
17%.
Yeah.
So in looking at the Trump voters and how this will impact them, it won't impact his team, his supporters. But for those voters who are watching him be convicted, who have watched this play out and are frustrated, they're not going to see this as an opportunity to vote for him, despite how they feel about Joe Biden, despite the fact they don't want Joe Biden to be president again. They're not going to vote for Donald Trump.
Well, it's interesting, Alvin. The strategy so far has been just give him rope. Joe Biden's not talking about this case openly, the New York criminal trial. But if we know we're not going to see Jack Smith bring him into court here in Washington, if we're in a world in which there is no January 6th trial, do we need to start reevaluating that strategy, start calling him out? Would that be a good move for Joe Biden over the summer?
I mean, on the one hand, sure. On the other, it is a bit of, I think, wasted time because, as we just laid out, the base is the base. And I think, there needs to be kind of a conservative effort put forth to try to sway or fix or bring those arguments kind of closer to what are those undecideds, because those are really where I feel like the advantage is for President Biden as opposed to, kind of attacking and targeting, President Trump in that way, because the base, that base isn't going anywhere. I mean, like you say, they've proven it time and time again. And so I think kind of playing to those undecideds and those people that are still in the middle are probably where, the president's efforts should probably be focused in that way.
Certainly a lot of time has been spent on programs like this one, analyzing comments from Donald Trump that can be seen potentially as dog whistles to that base to which we're referring. Speaking outside court this afternoon, Donald Trump was talking about the pro-Palestinian protests that we're seeing on campuses, including in New York, like at Columbia University, compared them to Charlottesville, where there was white supremacists. It ultimately led to a death of a woman. He said there were good people on both sides. He says Charlottesville was a little peanut, and it was nothing compared to the kind of hate we're seeing here. Maybe that does do things for his base, Maura, but what does that kind of rhetoric do for him with everyone else?
I don't think that one should compare the two. I don't think you should belittle what happened in Charlottesville in that way. So I think, again, talking to those undecided voters, they will once again see Donald Trump making flippant comments to try and defend himself for things that were indefensible. Again, an educated voter is not going to see that as a play to get their vote. He's only playing to his base. And to the point here is that those undecided voters are what's going to make or break the 24 election. That really is what's at stake here, and candidates should be trying to get those voters onto their side. I do think that you're going to see more write-ins because it's not the responsibility of us as voters to pick one or the other. It is the responsibility of the candidates to get our vote. And that is not how you get the vote of those who are Nikki Haley voters or those who are contemplating Joe Biden. That's not going to appeal to them.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to spend some time talking about Joe Biden.
Republicans is what abortion is to Democrats. Which one rises to the top?
They're both going to be important, especially when you're talking about those undecided voters. But I think what the president should be doing to try and win them over is talking about what voters can expect coming in the future. Yeah. Start getting into the tangible things that are actually going to matter to families at home. Housing prices, they need to talk more about that. And then again, hit on the abortion stuff. Talk about women's reproductive rights because that's going to draw in those undecideds. Republicans have long struggled. And again, speaking as a Republican, we have long struggled to talk about that issue. And it's certainly not going well for us when you have situations like what's happening in Arizona and in Florida coming up. So. Yeah.
Just quickly here, Alvin, we have about a minute left. We do have Biden in New York fundraising today. He has shown a lot of prowess in that aspect. Is that going to be enough to counteract his weakness in the polls ultimately, or does money not matter in a race like this one?
Well, money clearly matters, as we see the former president trying to scrape together everything that he can to continue.
He's got legal bills to pay.
Exactly. So, money does matter in the grand scheme of things. But I think that, obviously raising money is important. Let us not, act like it's not. But what really is important is kind of hitting on these issues and I think running the playbook to actually talk about some of these things like reproductive rights that, we've talked about here today. And I think the quicker that he can get to those, the better it'll be.
Just wait for Joe Biden's event with George Clooney, right? Julia
Hollywood.
Roberts. There's a lot of money yet to be raised. Maura Gillespie, Alvin Jordan, great conversation. We thank you for being with us.